Everyone at the range thought she didn't belong there. Most didn't even bother to watch her. Not until her very first shot broke the record no one else had come close to. The bell above the door gave a loud clang. As Selena Marshall walked into Clearwater Target Range, heads turned. Some people squinted. Others barely looked up from their coffee-stained score sheets. The smell of gunpowder hung heavy in the air, mixed with sweat and worn leather. Selena didn't react. She pulled her duffel bag strap higher on her shoulder and walked to the front desk, her boots making soft thuds. On the old, scratched linoleum floor, behind the counter, an older man with a thick gray mustache. His name tag said Rick. Barely glanced up. "Sign-ups are over there," he said, pointing without looking. Selena gave a small nod, even though he hadn't really greeted her, and quietly wrote her name down on the sheet. Her handwriting was neat and steady, a habit she'd formed long ago, because when people are already looking for reasons to doubt you, you don't give them any extra. The range buzzed with quiet chatter. She heard bits and pieces. New girl today. Probably won't last past the first round. Should be quick. Selena set her bag down on a bench and began unpacking. She moved with care, ear protection, gloves, rifle case. No wasted motion. Her body remembered what to do, the way it does when you've trained for years, even when the world tries to shake your confidence. She wore simple jeans and a plain green jacket. No flashy patches. No expensive tactical gear hanging off her like some of the regulars. Just her and her equipment. A group of men near Lane 5 kept sneaking looks at her. One of them, a short, round guy in a trucker cap and a tight red shirt, muttered something. That made the others laugh. Selena heard it. She heard everything, but she didn't give them the reaction they were hoping for. She pulled her rifle from its case, checked the barrel, and clicked the scope into place, with the calmness of someone checking the weather. "Hey, Rick," the man in the trucker hat called out, loud enough for half the building to hear. "Might want to clear a path to the door. This one might not stick around long." More laughter followed. It echoed off the concrete walls. Rick just shrugged. He wasn't going to stand up for her. Selena's face stayed calm, unreadable, but inside a quiet fire burned. Not the kind that explodes, but the kind that sharpens into something razor sharp. She sat down at a bench by the far wall, loading her magazine slowly with purpose. Her hands moved with ease. That comes from years of practice. Long before anyone here thought they could judge her, the speaker crackled overhead. "Open competition starts in 10 minutes. Get ready." People moved around, checking their gear, laughing louder now, trying to hide their nerves. Selena could feel the sideways looks, the quiet judgment piling up against her like sandbags. She didn't care. She wasn't here for them. She was here because deep down inside her, deeper than pride, deeper than anger, was the unshakable knowledge of who she was. A kind of knowing that no one could take away. She looked over at the old corkboard near the front desk where the Hall of Fame scores were pinned. One name filled the board for the last 6 years. Brett Dawson, a local legend. He'd shot a perfect score on moving targets back in 2017. People still talked about it like it happened yesterday. Selena gave the tiniest smile. Barely a flicker. Records are meant to be broken. But first, you have to step up and prove it. She sat quietly, tightening her glove strap, her mind steady. The noise around her grew, not from excitement, but from that kind of overconfidence. People get when they think they already know how the story ends. 2 rows down, a man with a thick beard leaned back in his chair, tossing a foam earplug in his hand. "You see her grip?" he said to the guy next to him. "Bet she's one of those Instagram shooters. Looks good in selfies. Probably not much else." They laugh, not in a mean way, exactly. More like the kind of laugh people have when they're sure they can't be wrong. Selena pressed her ear protectors on. The sound dimmed but didn't vanish. A few words still cut through, thin and sharp. She let them pass. Words are easy. Hitting a target from 50 yards? That's something else. Her mind flashed back to the open fields of Broken Bow, Oklahoma, where she first learned to hold a rifle steady. Her father, Reuben Marshall, never barked instructions. He stood behind her, calm and quiet, offering tips and small corrections. "Let the world get noisy," he used to say. "You stay quiet. Your hands know what to do." By age 10, she could knock a soda can off a fence post from 70 yards. By 13, she could outshoot every boy at summer camp. Not that anyone talked about it later. Winning was one thing. Winning when no one expected it, that was something else entirely. Back in Clearwater, the announcer's voice came through again. "First group, take your positions." Selena wasn't up yet. She'd drawn a later slot. Time to wait and watch. The first group lined up. Selena observed closely, not judging, just noticing. A man with a shiny black rifle jerked the trigger too hard. His shots went low. A woman in a camo jacket flinched with each shot. No one was perfect, but they cheered for each other anyway. A small club built on shared expectations. The champion, Brett Dawson, wasn't shooting today. He stood off to the side, arms crossed, talking with friends near the vending machines. Now and then, he glanced over at Selena, not in a mean way, more like she was a new dog at the park, and he was watching to see if she'd bark or bolt. Selena met his eyes once, brief, neutral, then turned her focus back to her gear. Time moved slowly. She kept her breathing steady, feeling the weight of the rifle across her lap, the calm beat of her pulse in her ears. A kid with braces, maybe 16, finished his round and let out a cheer when his score flashed on the screen. His friends clapped him on the back. Selena smiled, small but real, let them enjoy their moment. She wasn't there to take it from them. She was there for something else. "Rick," called the next group. Another set of names stepped forward. Selena kept her hands busy, checking, rechecking, moving through her routine. She caught more whispers. "She's still here? Maybe she's just watching. Maybe she's scared." Selena zipped her rifle case closed and slid it under the bench. Everything she didn't need, put away. Everything she did, right in front of her. The more they talked, the quieter she became inside. It was a strange kind of balance. The louder the world got, the more silent she turned. She watched her name move higher up the sign-in sheet. Almost her turn. She stretched her fingers inside her gloves. No shaking, no sweat, just a steady buzz of energy in her chest. Like an engine warming up, calm, controlled. A man brushed past her on his way to the restroom, laughing under his breath. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. Selena didn't look up. She didn't need to. But soon, all of them would be watching, whether they liked it or not. Selena Marshall, Lane 7. The announcement cut through the air like a blade, snapping everyone's attention back. Heads turned. Some pretended not to look. Others didn't even try to hide it. Selena stood up from the bench, lifting her rifle with practiced ease. Her boots made soft, steady steps on the concrete. She didn't rush, but she didn't drag her feet either. Just a clean, even walked the firing line. Lane 7 was near the far end of the range, half covered in afternoon sunlight, streaming through the high windows. Good, fewer distractions. She stepped into her lane, set her gear down carefully, and began her setup. First, she adjusted the stand, then checked her scope, a scratched-up Vortex model, well used but well cared for, the kind of gear that showed. She cared more about performance than price. She brushed a bit of dust from the barrel, looked downrange, and took a deep breath through her nose. To her right, two men leaned against the partition, whispering to each other. One shook his head like he already knew how this would end. Selena shut them out one bullet at a time. That's how you beat people's expectations. Rick strolled down the line, clipboard in hand. He paused briefly at Lane 7, gave her rifle a quick once-over, then scribbled something down without a word. Maybe he thought she didn't belong. Maybe he didn't care. Didn't matter either way. Selena loaded her first round. The click of the bolt echoed in her ears, even through the muffs. She let her hand rest there a moment longer, not from hesitation, but from habit. A quiet promise to herself. Focus, breathe, break. She leaned into the stock, feeling its familiar weight settle against her shoulder. The target downrange swayed just slightly in the breeze. Selena adjusted without thinking, her body and mind falling into a rhythm, older than memory. The range master raised a hand. Shooter ready? Selena gave a firm thumbs up. A few more people wandered into the seating area, drawn by the quiet hum of expectation. Someone elbowed Brett Dawson, said something Selena couldn't hear. Brett smirked, arms still folded, eyes locked on lane 7. The range master dropped his hand. Selena squeezed the trigger. Crack! The shot rang out, sharper than most, almost musical. She felt the rifle kick gently into her shoulder and watched the bullet punch clean through the center ring of the target. Dead on. There were no cheers, no whistles, just a heavy silence. The kind that creeps in when people realize they might have gotten it wrong. Selena didn't react. She chambered the next round smoothly, without turning to look at the crowd behind her. Another breath. Another shot. Crack. Again dead center. Somewhere behind her, a folding chair creaked, as someone sat down too fast. Selena kept going, shot after shot, calm and focused, like she was the only person in the room. By the time she emptied her first magazine, there wasn't a single casual conversation left. In Clearwater Target Range, only the sound of one woman, shooting with machine-like precision. Except machines don't make it look that effortless. Selena stepped back from the booth as the range master moved in to check her target sheet. Even from where she stood, she could already see it. A cluster of holes so tight, it looked like one large tear. Rick checked the digital monitor, his brow furrowed, lips moving as he counted under his breath. Selena removed her ear protection and placed them neatly down. Now the room felt strangely loud. Sneakers squeaking on concrete, gear rattling as people packed up, a few hushed voices whispering her name. She ignored all of it. The range master looked up at her, blinking a few times like he wasn't sure what he was seeing. You might want to come take a look at this, he said. Selena didn't move. She wasn't done. She reloaded. She had more to say, but she would finish her message the same way she started it, one bullet at a time. Selena didn't rush. She slid another round into the chamber, letting the quiet stretch a few seconds longer. This wasn't about showing off. It was about respect, for the craft, for herself, for every single minute she'd spent, getting ready for moments like this. Another breath, slow and steady. She felt her chest rise and fall, the slight pull in her shoulders, the trigger firm under her finger. Crack! The third shot. She barely blinked. It hit the same hole as the others. Dead center, like the bullet had followed an invisible path. Behind her, the audience shifted again, not laughing now. Their early smirks were fading into something quieter, something closer to awe. Selena stayed focused. She worked through her shots, each one cutting the air with precision, not rushed, not delayed. A rhythm, a breath, a trigger, a quiet storm, growing with every round. When her second magazine ran dry, the range master didn't wait for her to step back. He was already staring at the monitor, his expression shifting slowly, confused and surprised and stunned. Behind Selena, the whispers started again, but this time they sounded different. Did you see that grouping? That's professional level. Who is she? Selena didn't hear any of it. Her world had narrowed down to the small square of the target, far in the distance, the way the rifle in her hands, the faint smell of gunpowder in the air. Rick walked over to her lane, frowning at the tablet in his hand, then looking at Selena, then back at the screen. You're ranking higher than anyone else today, he said, his voice a little rough, like the words didn't sit right in his mouth. Selena said nothing. She loaded her final round. This shot wasn't just about hitting the mark. This one was the exclamation point, the ending to everything she'd been saying silently, with her focus and her skill. She lined up the sights. Her breathing slowed until it was barely a whisper in her ears. Pull. Crack. The last shot hit with perfect accuracy. Dead center again. She set the rifle down gently on the bench, like a musician laying down their instrument after playing the final note. Rick stared at the screen. The range master walked over. Then a third man joined. Then Brett Dawson himself, arms still folded, his confident smirk now replaced by something harder to name. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the range master finally exhaled. New record, he said quietly, like he could hardly believe it. Selena took off her gloves, tucked them into her bag, and wiped her palms on her jeans. Her name, plain and simple, Selena Marshall, lit up across the big screen at the front of the room. Top score, set by a woman most of them hadn't even greeted. When she walked in, Brett pushed away from the wall and slowly walked toward lane 7. His boots echoed loudly on the concrete in the quiet room. He stopped a few feet from her and really looked at her for the first time. That was solid work, he said, his voice low, almost reluctant. Selena didn't smile. She didn't brag. She just met his eyes with the same calm she had shown through every shot. Thanks, she said simply. Someone clapped in the back. A beat of awkward silence. Then a few more claps joined in. The sound was uneven, but real. Selena nodded once, almost like a bow, and slung her rifle bag over her shoulder. She wasn't there to be the center of attention. She wasn't there to teach anyone a lesson. She already had, without saying a word, and she knew as she walked away that her message had landed, stronger than any bullet ever could. Selena walked back to the bench, her movements smooth and unhurried. She packed her gear with the same care she used while shooting, deliberate, focused, unaffected by the noise around her. But the noise had changed. The conversations that had once been light now had a different tone, lower, heavier, with something unspoken beneath it. The regulars, the same ones who barely looked at her before, now sneaked glances when they thought she wouldn't notice. Brett Dawson stayed near lane 7. His arms had dropped to his sides. He scratched the back of his neck, that small, nervous habit people have when they need a moment to rethink everything. You ever shoot in competitions? He asked, stepping a little closer. His voice was friendlier now, but still stiff, like it hadn't learned how to relax yet. Selena zipped up her rifle case and stood up. Her body looked calm, but ready. Here and there, she said. Simple, honest, no need to explain herself. To people who hadn't cared to ask before, Brett nodded, slowly, the kind of nod people use when they're trying to reprocess everything they thought they knew. You're good, he said after a pause. Really good. Across the room, Rick watched them, his expression hard to read. One of Brett's friends, a younger guy with a buzz cut, leaned over to someone near the vending machines. Knew she had good form, he said loud enough to be heard, though none of them had said that earlier. Selena heard it, but didn't react. She'd heard that kind of revision before. When you fail, you're on your own. But when you win, suddenly everyone knew you had it in you all along. The range master walked up, holding a clipboard, looking a bit awkward. We'd, like to put your photo on the Hall of Fame board, he said, nodding toward the cork board, where Brett's photo had been the star for years. Selena gave a small smile, polite but distant. No thanks, she said. I'm good. The range master blinked, surprised. He chuckled nervously, thinking maybe she was joking, but when her expression didn't change, he cleared his throat and nodded. People were still watching her now, not with mockery, but with curiosity, maybe even a little respect. But Selena didn't care about earning that kind of respect, not if she had to drag it out of them. She slung her duffel bag over her shoulder and started walking toward the door. Someone clapped again, this time soft but sincere. A second person joined in. Selena didn't stop. Each step was steady, each breath easy. At the door, she paused, turned slightly, just enough to catch the room from the corner of her eye. If you're going to bet against someone, she said, voice calm and clear, make sure you're not just judging the surface. Then she pushed open the door and stepped out into the sunlight. The afternoon heat touched her face. The wide Florida sky stretched above her, bright and endless. She took a long breath, tasting the salt in the air from a nearby gulf and the smell of fresh-cut grass from a nearby field. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her dad. How'd it go? Selena smiled genuinely this time. Fine, she texted back. Better than fine. She slipped her phone away and walked to her car, keys jingling softly in her hand. Behind her, inside the range, the door swung shut with a dull thud. But what she left behind, that wasn't going to fade so quickly. Selena tossed her duffel bag into the passenger seat and slid behind the wheel. She sat there for a moment, her hands resting lightly on the steering wheel, letting the last hum of adrenaline fade. It wasn't about the record. It wasn't even about the people who had doubted her. It was about something older, deeper, a promise she had made to herself years ago, that no matter where she went, no matter what people thought, when she walked through a door, she'd still walk in. She always showed up as herself. Every time she started the car, the engine rumbled to life, steady, familiar. Selena pulled out of the parking lot without looking back. She didn't need her picture on the wall to remind her of what she'd done. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the streets of Clearwater. Selena drove with the windows down, the warm breeze tugging gently at her jacket. She passed small shops, a bait store, a tire shop, a diner with a faded sign swinging in the wind. Ordinary places, filled with ordinary people, none of whom would ever know what had just happened down at the range. And that was perfectly fine with her. At a red light, Selena caught a reflection in the side mirror. For a moment, she thought of all the girls growing up in towns like Broken Bow, girls who might walk into rooms one day and feel like they didn't belong. She thought about how many would leave those rooms without ever getting a real chance to prove themselves. She hoped her story would ripple outward, not loudly, but quietly, through conversations, through second thoughts, through small changes. Maybe next time someone new walked through those doors, a little more space would be made for them. The light turned green. Selena pulled onto the highway, the sun dipping lower behind her. Her father's voice came to her from old memories. You don't have to shout to be heard, he used to say. You just have to hit your mark. Selena smiled, feeling the memory of the rifle against her shoulder, the clean snap of each shot, still echoing softly inside her. There's power in showing people who you are, without asking permission. There's power in staying steady when the world tries to knock you off balance, not just on shooting ranges, not just in competitions, but in boardrooms, in classrooms, in every room you ever walk into. Selena didn't think of herself as a hero. She didn't think what she'd done was extraordinary. She had simply kept a promise to herself. She turned up the radio. An old country song filled the car. She allowed herself to relax. She'd earned that much. A blue pickup truck passed her on the left, two teenage boys laughing about something. She couldn't hear. Life kept moving. It always did. Selena tapped her fingers on the steering wheel, settled in her own rhythm. She carried her one like something small and quiet, tucked inside a pocket. Not a trophy, not a title, just a piece of herself. No matter what came next, no matter what room she entered, she'd carry this with her. She knew exactly what she could do. And now, so did they. But the real prize wasn't the record. It was knowing she never needed their approval to begin with. The drive home was long but peaceful. Selena didn't mind the time alone with her thoughts. Out on the open highway, the gulf behind her, the wide Florida sky stretching out above, she let herself replay the day, not to question it, not to overanalyze it, but to honor it. She thought of how Brett Dawson looked at her when her score came in. Not angry, not defensive, just surprised, maybe even humbled. Selena hoped that feeling stayed with him. She hoped the next time he saw someone who didn't fit his idea of what belonged, he'd leave a little more space in his mind for the unexpected. That's how the world really changes. Not through big headlines, but on quiet afternoons, when someone breaks through a wall no one else even knew was there. Selena turned off the highway, onto a quiet country road. The sun melted into streaks of orange and purple across the sky. She thought about the girls growing up right now, in small towns, big cities, suburbs, girls learning in small ways where they're allowed to fit. She hoped someday they'd walk into rooms without that invisible weight on their shoulders, because someone like her had walked in first and refused to walk out. She pulled into the driveway of her small house on the edge of Dunedin. The porch light flickered on. Inside, her old Labrador, Moose, thumped his tail against the floor, happy just to see her. No expectations, no assumptions, just welcome. Selena dropped her bag by the door and sat down on the floor, cross-legged. Moose nudged his head into her lap. With a soft grunt, she scratched behind his ears, letting the quiet comfort of home settle deep inside her. The world could be loud, quick to judge, but it could also change. One person, one moment, one brave refusal at a time. Selena leaned back against the wall and closed her eyes for just a moment. Tomorrow would come, with its noise, its opinions, its side glances. She'd be ready. She always was. And maybe, just maybe, someone who had watched her that day at Clearwater would think twice before dismissing someone else too soon. Maybe they'd listen. Maybe they'd make room. Selena smiled to herself, a small, private smile, not for anyone else, just for her. It didn't take a speech or a big entrance to leave a mark. Sometimes all it took was standing your ground and hitting your target when no one thought you could, and that was enough. So if you're hearing this right now, and you've ever been doubted, underestimated, or judged before you even had a chance to speak, remember this. You don't need to shout to show who you are. You don't need to wear it on your sleeve. You just need to know it deep down. And when your moment comes, because it will come, you'll be ready to hit your mark too. Thanks for spending time with us. If Selena's story struck a chord, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. We'll see you next time with another story to remind you the only permission you ever needed was your own.